closing of churches during pandemic constitutional? Can government orders collide with Bible passages? By the way, I am Elizer's Sakai of Elizer's Insights. Twice a month, I upload motivational videos in this channel. Please click subscribe and the notification bell so you will be updated with the new videos. You may click my picture for earlier videos. Please share. Your subscription encourages me as well. Let's compare the constitutions of USA and the Philippines. The U.S. Constitution under the First Amendment provides, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, or to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The 1987 Philippine Constitution, in its Bill of Rights, Article 3, Section 5, provides, no law shall be made respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship, without discrimination or preference, shall forever be allowed. No religious test shall be required for the exercise of civil or political rights. Noticeably, both constitutions plainly worded that the free exercise of religion shall not be prohibited. The issue came when COVID-19 caused a pandemic that most of the U.S. state governors ordered closure, including churches. Philippine President Duterte did the same. Back to the question, is it constitutional for the government heads to close churches during this COVID-19 pandemic? Both countries, U.S. and Philippines, their constitutions provided that the free exercise of religions shall not be prohibited. Is not closure orders a prohibition of the free exercise of religion? Another issue to consider are the following passages of the Bible. Acts 5:29, we will read. It says, we ought to obey God rather than man. 1 Peter 2:13-14, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme or unto governors. King James Version. Romans 13:1-4, English Standard Version. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, for he, the legitimate ruler, is God's servant for your good. When the governor of New York restricted church attendance due to the pandemic, some churches, including the Diocese of Brooklyn, New York, took a legal action for temporary injunction against the New York. A federal judge said, the potential to save lives outweighed the damage the church would suffer. The religious freedom in those passages prompted also a mega church in Los Angeles County not to follow the closure order. So their church members attended the church as their pastor opened it for indoor worship, with many without masks, according to report, and stayed in close proximity to each other. The Los Angeles County filed a preliminary injunction against the church for it not to hold indoor services. Before the set hearing, the county requested that the court issue a temporary restraining order to prohibit it from holding indoor services. The Los Angeles Times in August 25 published that the county's request was denied. So the church continued holding church or indoor worship. However, when the main hearing for the preliminary injunction came, the Los Angeles Superior Court granted it to the disfavor of the church. The pastor was prohibited from hosting indoor worship services. The Religion News Service on September 10 published that the Los Angeles County attorneys sent a cease and desist letter to the church, threatening arrest or a daily fine of $1,000. As the case goes further, the issue of its constitutionality will be the question at stake. Is the closing of churches during pandemic constitutional or unconstitutional? At a single glance, it may be an infringement of religious freedom. To the courts, it may not, by putting health interests of the general public a priority. For many years, the U.S. courts analyzed claims of religious freedom under a three-part test. First, they asked whether the religious belief or practice was sincerely held and restricted by a law, policy, or regulation of the government. The First Amendment does not restrict private acts of non-governmental entities. Second, courts then ask whether a sufficiently compelling state interest justified a restriction. And the third, if the state interest was compelling, courts would ask whether the state interest and the religious liberty interest could be reconciled without violating either. Since I am not a practicing lawyer in California, I take some thoughts from Attorney Alan Reinach, Esquire, Executive Director and General Counsel of Church-State Council of Pacific Union Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He summed up his thoughts as follows. Even under the compelling interest test, a religious liberty claim to exempt religious gatherings from restrictions would be a losing proposition. The logic of social distancing requires maximum participation. Exemptions would undermine the effectiveness of social distancing to slow the spread of virus. When asked, don't we have a fundamental right to assemble together for worship? His answer was yes, but that right is subordinate to the authority of the state to impose restrictions deemed necessary to save lives. He added, restrictions such as those related to the present coronavirus crisis apply generally to all gatherings, not just religious gatherings. Therefore, under current constitutional interpretation, there is simply no religious freedom claim to an exemption under the First Amendment. Dr. John Pauline, professor of Loma Linda University School of Religion, said, I recognize that there are limits to the legitimacy of governing authorities. I recognize that there is tension between religious liberty and public health, but in that tension, the Bible encourages us as much as possible to be subject to the governing authorities and be cooperative with the communities. I have many things yet to say, but this is it for now. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, watch my other videos, and share. My closing counsel for you, no matter what is, be faithful.